I probably shouldn't still think about that night, but for some reason it always comes back the moment I'm alone in a parking lot. And the strange thing is, I didn't even see his face. I only saw the shadow of a man standing behind my car at 11:42 p.m., not moving, not speaking, just waiting. That should have been impossible, because when I walked to my car, I was the only person in that lot. I was 23 then, working late shifts at a small hardware store on the edge of town. The kind of place that closed at midnight but always felt like it was stuck at 8 p.m. warm lights, soft humming from the old refrigerators, aisles filled with that dusty smell from bags of concrete mix. It wasn't a bad job, quiet, predictable. Nothing ever happened there. My routine was simple. Lock the registers, sweep the front area, close the shutters, then take the short walk through the employee exit into the back parking lot. The back lot was always empty at night since most workers left before 10. My car was usually the only one sitting there, a dull blue sedan with a dented bumper. That night felt normal, maybe even calmer than usual. I remember humming something under my breath as I turned off the store lights. I checked the time on my phone. 11:37 p.m. I was right on schedule. The moment I stepped into the night air, the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. The store sat off Route 19, and normally you could hear the distant hum of late-night traffic. But that night, nothing. Just wine brushing against the metal dumpsters. I didn't think much of it. I was tired. My back hurt from lifting paint buckets earlier. I just wanted to get home, eat something small, and fall asleep in front of my cheap box fan. I walked toward my car, keys in my right hand, my backpack slung low on my shoulder. I wasn't thinking about danger. I wasn't thinking about anything at all. Then my phone buzzed once in my pocket. A single vibration, no notification when I checked, just a buzz. I frowned a little, then shoved it back in my pocket. I know it sounds like nothing, but I swear in hindsight, that was the moment something shifted. The air felt colder, heavier, like the world had gone still. I unlocked my car. The headlights flashed once, illuminating the empty asphalt. I didn't see anyone. I opened the back door and tossed my backpack inside. It hit the seat with a soft thud, and as I leaned in to push it over, something made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't a sound, not exactly, more like the lack of one. A sudden, unnatural silence, as if everything around me had paused. I turned to shut the door, and that's when I froze. Because when the door swung closed, the reflective strip on my taillight caught something behind me. A shape, a silhouette, a man. Standing directly behind the trunk of my car, I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear breathing. He wasn't there 10 seconds earlier, but he was there now. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, shoulders a little hunched, wearing something dark that blended into the night. I couldn't see his face, just the outline of a human figure standing perfectly still, as if he'd been waiting. My throat tightened. I didn't speak. I didn't move. For a full 2 seconds, my brain simply refused to understand what I was seeing. Then I inhaled sharply and stepped back. My keys clenched so tight they dug into my palm. "Hey," I said, but my voice cracked. He didn't respond. He didn't flinch. He didn't even tilt his head. He just stood there. My heart started hammering so loud I could feel it in my ears. I slowly backed toward the driver's door, never taking my eyes off him. I swallowed hard. "Do you need help or something?" Nothing. No movement, no sound. Just a silent figure in the dark. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. I didn't want to turn my back to him, not for a second, but I knew I had to get inside the car. When I finally yanked the door open and slid into the seat, I locked the doors immediately. The click echoed unnaturally loud. I leaned forward and stared through the windshield, trying to catch a glimpse of the man through the rearview mirror. He was closer now. Not much. Maybe a step or two, but enough. Enough that I could see the faint outline of his arms hanging at his sides. Enough to see that he was facing me directly. Enough to know that he had moved without a single sound. My breath came out shaky. My hands were cold on the steering wheel. I turned the key. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. That was when he finally reacted. Not by stepping back or raising his hands or doing literally anything a normal person might do. No, he simply tilted his head slightly as if he were studying the roof of my car instead of me. I can't explain what that felt like. It was wrong. Deeply, instinctively wrong. I shifted into reverse, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then slammed my foot on the brake and stared at him again. He hadn't moved, but now he was too close to reverse without hitting him. He stood right at my bumper, leaning in just slightly. Not enough for me to see his face, but enough to know he could probably see mine clearly. I whispered to myself, "What do you want?" The windows fogged slightly from my breath. I wiped the inside with my sleeve, never breaking eye contact. That's when he finally moved. Very slowly, painfully slow, he raised his right hand. Not waving, not signaling, just lifting it to chest height, as if pointing at the trunk. But he wasn't pointing at the trunk. He was pointing through it. At me. I froze. My stomach clenched so hard I felt nauseous. There was something deliberate about the movement. Something rehearsed. Something not meant to communicate anything, except that he knew exactly where I was sitting. I couldn't reverse, and I didn't dare drive forward into the wall behind the lot. My hands were sweating against the steering wheel. My eyes darted toward the gear shift, then back to him. Gone. He was just gone. No footsteps, no running, no shadow moving away. 1 second he was there. The next he wasn't. I blinked rapidly, my breath coming in sharp bursts. My eyes scanned the rearview mirror, the side mirrors, the empty pavement behind me. He was nowhere. Jesus Christ, I whispered. I threw the car into reverse and backed out too fast, my tires screeching on the asphalt. I didn't care if I hit anything. I didn't even check behind me. I peeled out of the lot, turning onto Route 19 with shaking hands, constantly checking my mirrors. Every dark patch on the side of the road looked like him. Every shadow looked like a figure waiting. By the time I got home, I felt sick. My legs were weak when I stepped out of the car. I ran up the stairs to my apartment and locked the door behind me. Leaning against it as if something might follow me inside, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Every creak in the walls felt like footsteps approaching my door. The next morning, I returned to the hardware store early, long before my shift, because part of me needed to know I had imagined everything I checked the cameras. There was footage of me walking to my car, footage of me opening the back door, footage of me tossing in my backpack, and then, at 11:42 p.m., exactly when I remembered seeing him, something strange happened. My body stuttered, glitched almost. In the footage, I froze mid-step as if the camera dropped frames. The screen flickered once, then twice, and when the image stabilized again, there was nothing behind me. No man, no shadow, not a single pixel out of place. I stood there in the security office, staring at the replay until my manager arrived. I didn't tell him anything. I couldn't. To this day, I don't know what I saw, or if I saw anything at all. But sometimes, when I'm driving home late at night, my phone buzzes once for no reason, and without thinking, I check the mirror. There's something I should tell you before I start this story. I never stepped foot inside that apartment. Not once. Not even when I saw the door standing wide open at 2:03 in the morning. But I swear to you, someone was standing in the dark behind it, and they were waiting for me to notice them. Back then, I lived alone in a quiet 3-story complex on the east side of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. Good lighting, locked gates, neighbors who kept to themselves. My unit was on the 2nd floor, right at the end of the hallway facing the courtyard. The building had a rhythm. Lights dimmed at midnight. Most people slept early. And the hallways always stayed silent after 10 p.m. That night was supposed to be the same. I came home around 1:30 a.m. after helping a friend with a late move. My arms ached, my shirt was sticking to my back, and all I wanted was a cold shower and the comfort of my bed. I parked beside the courtyard, locked my car, and climbed the stairs with that heavy, sleepy dragging of footsteps you get after a long day. The moment I reached the 2nd floor landing, I noticed something was off. The hallway light nearest my apartment flickered, Not like it was dying, more like something was stepping in front of it and blocking it for half a second at a time. I remember stopping on the stairs, staring at it, feeling my heartbeat slow and deepen in that anxious way it does when your brain tries to make sense of something too quickly. But I brushed it off. The building was old. Things flickered. I walked down the hall toward my door. That was when I saw it. Apartment 2, C3 doors before mine. Its door stood wide open, not cracked, not unlocked, not slightly ajar, completely open, like someone had thrown it open and forgotten about it, and the lights inside were off. A small rectangle of absolute darkness sat where the doorway should have been. Swallowing the warm hallway light at its edges, I slowed instinctively, my breath catching in my throat. I knew the woman who lived there, kind of. Her name was Elise. Quiet, kept to herself, worked the nights at a veterinary clinic. I'd seen her leave early in scrubs and come back with grocery bags around sunrise. She always nodded politely but never talked much. At 2:03 a.m., she should have been at work. So why was her door open? I took one step closer and whispered, "Hello?" My voice sounded too loud in the empty hall. No answer. Another flicker buzzed from the hallway light. Something in me tightened. Not fear exactly. More like the stiffening of instincts that don't want you to move forward. I walked slowly, each step feeling heavier, my keys clinking quietly in my hand. That's when I noticed the first detail that made my chest tighten. The welcome mat was pushed slightly to the right. Like someone had stepped on half of it with force, Elise's welcome mat was always perfectly centered. Always. I stopped just short of the doorway. "Hello," I said again. "Are you okay in there?" Nothing. Only silence. Thick, unmoving silence. And that smell. A faint metallic tang drifting from inside. Not blood, something less obvious, like old pipes or rusted water. I leaned in just enough to see maybe 2 feet into the apartment. The darkness was so complete it looked solid. My eyes could barely make out shapes, maybe the edge of a counter, maybe the corner of a couch. But then, something moved. Not a shape, not a sound, a shift, a presence. Like someone was standing perfectly still just beyond that darkness, and my brain had finally started to register the outline of a person against the black. My throat tightened immediately. It was subtle, almost impossible to see. A shoulder, a head tilted slightly, a darker shade within the dark. For a second, I doubted myself. Maybe it was my eyes adjusting, maybe just shadows. But then the figure breathed, a slow, deliberate inhale, quiet, but not quiet enough. I stepped back instantly, my heel nearly slipping on the hallway laminate. My heart started hammering. "Elise?" Another breath came from inside, not hurried, not startled, calm, controlled, like whoever or whatever was standing in that darkness knew I was out here, knew I was listening, knew I wasn't leaving. My hands started shaking. I backed away one step at a time, never turning around, never taking my eyes off the doorway. At 6 feet away, I saw something that froze me completely. A faint reflection, barely visible, glinting at the height of a pair of eyes. Like someone watching me, I swallowed hard. My legs felt weak. I whispered, "I'm calling someone." There was no response. No shifting, no movement. Just the faint, steady breathing from the dark. I turned and speed walked straight to my apartment door, my hands fumbling the keys twice before I finally unlocked it. I stepped inside, slammed the door shut, locked it, deadbolt and chain, and pressed my ear against the wood. Nothing. No footsteps, no door closing, no voice calling after me. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd imagined everything. Maybe Elise had left her door open by accident, and the breathing was just the building settling. But then, a soft tap, very faint, barely audible. I froze, pressed harder against the door. Tap, tap, like someone testing the hallway floor with the tip of a shoe. Slow, gentle, cautious. Then, silence. Long, suffocating silence. I stayed like that, ear pressed to the door for a full minute. Then 2, then 5. Nothing. Eventually, I slid down to the floor, sitting with my back against the door. I didn't move for almost 20 minutes. My breathing was too fast. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. At 2:41 a.m., I finally worked up the nerve to peek through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The door to apartment 2C was closed, not ajar, not halfway, fully closed, perfectly centered welcome mat, as if nothing had happened at all. I stayed awake the rest of the night. I didn't even turn off the lights. Every creak in the building made me jump. Every passing car outside felt like a threat. I couldn't shake the image of that dark shape behind the doorway, still, patient, aware of me. At sunrise, when the complex finally felt alive again, with distant voices and footsteps, I stepped outside. Apartment 2C looked normal. Door shut, curtains drawn, quiet as always. On my way down the stairs, I saw the building manager standing by the mailboxes. I walked up to him and forced a laugh. "Hey, did you notice anything strange last night? Like, maybe someone forgot to lock their door?" He shrugged. "Quiet night. Why?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "Nothing. Just thought I heard something." I didn't want to sound paranoid, or crazy, or worse, correct. Later that evening, around 7 p.m., I heard movement in the hallway and peeked out my peephole. It was Elise, coming home from work. Normal clothes, normal posture. She slid her key into her door, opened it, and walked inside like nothing had happened. I watched the entire motion carefully. She didn't pause at the doorway, didn't act like someone had been there, didn't check behind her, just stepped in and shut the door. That should have reassured me, but it didn't. Because here's the part I never understood. If she'd been at work all night and she always double-locked her door, who opened it at 2:03 a.m.? And who closed it again before she came back? I never asked her. I never even made eye contact with her again. But every night for weeks as I tried to sleep, I could feel it. The sensation of being watched through that doorway. The stillness. The breathing. The glint of eyes inside the dark. That moment lodged itself somewhere deep in my spine. And the worst part? Sometimes even now, when I come home late and walk past that old apartment, I swear I can still see a darker patch of darkness inside, and it feels like it's waiting, just in case I look inside again. You'd be surprised how quickly you can get used to fear. Not at first, of course not. The first night it happens, your stomach drops, your throat closes up, and your hands shake the way mine did. But after it happens again, and again, and again, your brain starts to fold the terror into something else. Routine, expectation, dread that becomes familiar. I didn't know any of that before last winter, before someone started knocking on my door every night at 3:12 a.m. Back then, I was living in a cramped studio apartment on West Hill Road. Cheap place, leaky bathroom, thin walls. I'd moved there because it was close to my job, and honestly, because it was all I could afford at the time. The building itself wasn't unsafe exactly, just old and ignored. A long, narrow hallway ran past all 10 units, and the ceiling lights buzzed like a hive of flies during summer. The air always smelled faintly of warm dust and old carpet. My door was second from the end. Apartment 7. Nobody important lived there. Nobody loud, nobody dangerous. Just tired people trying to get through life. Me included. That winter was cold. So cold the windows built up thin layers of ice along the edges. I slept with 2 blankets and a cheap portable heater humming near my feet. My work schedule was brutal back then, so I usually collapsed into bed by midnight. The first night someone knocked, I woke up thinking it was a dream. A single knock, slow, heavy. I checked my phone. 3:12 a.m. My room was silent except for the hum of the heater. I blinked sleep from my eyes, listening. Nothing. I figured maybe another tenant came home drunk and hit the wrong door. It had happened before. People getting confused, fumbling with their keys. So I rolled onto my back and forced my heartbeat to slow down. But then, 10 seconds later, it came again. Knock. Not frantic, not angry, just steady, intentional. I sat up, pulse rising. I stared at the door, expecting the knock to come again. When nothing else happened, I slowly lay back down. I must have stayed awake for at least an hour staring at the ceiling, waiting. No more knocks. I shrugged it off the next morning. People make mistakes, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. The second night, it happened again. Same time. I woke up instantly this time, like my body had been listening for it. Knock. Then silence. Deep, eating silence. I sat upright, my breath fogging slightly from the cold in my room. I stared at the door, waiting. Another knock. Soft, measured. I didn't get up. I didn't go near it. I whispered, "Who is it?" But there was no answer. My voice sounded too loud in the room. By the time morning came, I convinced myself it must have been someone from upstairs wandering down the wrong hallway. The building had a strange layout after all, but inside something in me had already begun to twist. Night 3 was worse. There was no first knock, no second knock. Instead, 3 slow taps, like someone using the tips of their fingers instead of a knuckle. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up slowly, feeling the cold air cling to my skin. The room felt smaller, like something was pressing into the space around me. I whispered again, "Who's there?" Silence. I got out of bed this time and walked halfway to the door. I didn't look through the peephole yet. Something in me refused to. I just stood there listening. Nothing. No footsteps walking away. No shifting fabric. No sound at all. I backed up cautiously and returned to bed, heart racing for the rest of the night. By night 4, I couldn't convince myself it was a mistake anymore. The knock came again, 3:12 on the dot. I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting. I don't know why, but this time the knock sounded different, closer or deeper maybe, like the person was leaning in, placing their weight into it. I held my breath. A thought drifted in. What if it's someone who lives here? Someone who knows when people are sleeping? Someone who waits for the hallway to fall silent? My fingers curled into the blankets. Then, as softly as someone testing the temperature of water, tap, tap, tap. Right beside the doorframe, near the peephole. My skin prickled. They were closer, just inches from being eye level with me. I didn't move, didn't whisper, didn't breathe. Minutes passed, long, impossible minutes. Eventually, the silence returned. I stayed awake until morning. On night 5, I finally looked. The knock came at the same time as always, but this time the pattern changed. Not just one knock, not 3 taps, but a slow sequence. Knock, pause, knock, knock, pause, knock. Almost like a rhythm, almost like they knew I was awake now. My chest tightened. My fingers trembled against the blanket. I stared at the door for a long time, every part of me screaming not to go near it. But something heavier, curiosity, desperation, fear, pulled me out of bed. The floor felt like ice beneath my feet. The darkness seemed thicker around the doorframe. I stepped closer, and closer. My pulse thudded so loud I could feel it in my jaw. I put my eye to the peephole. My breath hitched instantly. Someone was standing there. Not their face, not directly. Just the top of their head, the hair. They were standing too close, right up against the door. So close the peephole could only see a patch of messy dark hair and part of a forehead tilted slightly downward. Whoever they were, they knew exactly where the peephole was, and they were standing just low enough that I couldn't see their eyes. I stumbled back, my heel hitting the wall behind me. The knocking stopped instantly. No more taps, no more sequence, just silence. I stood frozen for maybe a minute, 2, maybe longer. Eventually I whispered, "I'm calling the police." No answer, no footsteps walking away. And that was the worst part. They didn't leave. They just disappeared. Because when I looked again, after building up every ounce of courage, I couldn't see anyone. The hallway was empty, completely, impossibly empty. I double-locked the door and didn't sleep at all that night. I told the building manager the next morning. He shrugged and said, "Maybe someone had the wrong unit." I told him the knocks were happening at the same exact time every night. He joked that maybe I was sleepwalking. I didn't laugh. I asked if the hallway cameras worked. "Camera's been dead for months," he said. That didn't help. Night 6 was quiet. No knocks, no taps, no rhythm, nothing. For the first time in a week, I slept. I should have been relieved. Instead, the silence felt wrong. Too heavy, too deliberate. I kept telling myself the person had moved on. But at 3:12 a.m., I woke up anyway. I don't know why. No sound, no knocking, just waking.